as well.
Certainly. Hi, good afternoon. My name is Shamika Leacock. I serve as the Associate Director of Community at the James Beard Foundation. We're excited to continue our partnership with the Queer Food Foundation and the work that they do with the Zoom panel. I'm going to turn the panel over to the host for today's session.
Hi, I'm Jona Beliu. I use they or she, and I'm one of the co-directors and co-founders of the Queer Food Foundation. I'll let Sunny intro a little bit more about us.
Perfect. My name is Sunny Levine. I'm the chair of the board of directors of the Queer Food Foundation, and a formal welcome to Canna Culture, another installment of Queer All Year, which is our bi-monthly panel series in partnership with the James Beard Foundation. Thank you, Shamika and the James Beard Foundation team for the continued opportunities to spotlight diverse voices in food and beverage, and of course, our partners at Bento Box as well for their sponsorship. The criminalization of marijuana has led to disproportionate numbers of arrests, incarcerations for drug-related offenses, even though usage rates are very similar across different demographics. But today we're here to highlight some queer pioneers in the cannabis space. We're here to discuss the intersections between queerness and cannabis and equity and justice in the space. Back to you, Jona.
Thank you. And I'll give each of our panelists some time to introduce themselves and their organization. Rashad, would you like to go first?
Sure, no problem. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rashad Davis. I'm the CEO of Plantivia Wellness. We are a CBD wellness store located in downtown Newark, New Jersey. We've also been recently approved to open a cannabis dispensary in Newark as well. I'm happy to announce we just finished up our Hemp Fest from last week, which is helping everyone maintain Peace Fest, where we bring together all the wonderful lifestyles of cannabis for of events. Our main goal with our business is to help change the stigma of cannabis and hemp in the BIPOC communities.
Thank you so much. Dae, would you like to go or would you need a second?
Oh, no, I'm good. Hello, can everyone see me or hear me? Okay, cool. Nice to meet you guys. My name is Dae. I go by he, him, and Dae, but with a D. And I am a Korean American queer founder behind Sundae School. Our brand is a cannabis brand and a cannabis lifestyle brand. We also make garments. We like to call them smokewear. And yeah, we are operational in the state of California. And I'm so grateful to be here to be able to chat with you guys today.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that, Dae. And Katie, would you like to do a little intro?
Sure. My name is Katie Stem, and I am the co-founder and former CEO of Peak Extracts in Oregon, recently merged with East Fork Cultivars. I'm the president with that company, and I'm also the chief products officer for Mantis Growth Investments.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all for joining. You know, I really want to start off with just getting into where it all started for each of you. I'm sure it's probably a little bit different, but there might be some overlaps. But could you tell us how you got into the cannabis world, and particularly the edible cannabis, or where your specialties lie? And we can go with whoever feels more comfortable going, or I'm more than happy to pick on folks and go from there.
I can go first, if that's okay with y'all. I'm born and raised in South Korea, which is a very homophobic country. It's very homogenous culture, and because of like the deep religious story, whether it's Confucianism or whether it's through the Western kind of evangelism that happened in the 1900s. There's a lot of kind of misinformation and miseducation about, our sexuality, and, people have a lot of opinions about who you should love and whatnot. Coming to America when I came here at 13 was such a shock because I've never been exposed to this much kind of diversity beyond just like race, shape, size, whatnot, like beyond the physical, beyond the visceral, but diversity of opinions and ideas. And I'm sure so many people in our generation feel that way. But the world obviously is growing to be a more kind of accepting place, obviously, as kind of the democratization of information is happening. But back then, I thought it was really like wrong to be gay, and wrong that I am experiencing different things and I cannot relate to when my friends are like, wow, did you see that girl, blah 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 blah. But then it was really through cannabis where, I mean, this may sound like such a cliche, but before I was just, I was trying to bottle all of my feelings to myself and whatnot, and I was scared to ever voice this to anyone. So I actually was closeted till I was 20, not telling a single soul, but just my diaries. But it was really through cannabis that kind of allowed me to communicate with myself more openly, and allowed myself to have a greater understanding beyond what I thought people would think about me and whatnot. And that has been such a important kind of moment and important continuing influence in my life. So that is and it's such a special time to be able to have a business and not be ashamed of who we are, and to be able to idiosyncratically express our vision, whether it's via our garments that we make, or whether it's via the food, the cannabis edibles that we create, and to do everything kind of our way, something that is unique to us, rather than making another peach mango flavor. So for us, our edibles, we only have them in California because it's really hard to replicate, and we had to work with different manufacturers over time in order to create them. But right now we have kind of 6 flavors out in the market, with 4 more coming out, and it's all the flavors inspired by our childhood, whether it's from going to church, going to actual Sunday school and grabbing boba after, to our favorite childhood memories in Jeju Island, picking yuzu and eating it, to a new flavor that we're about to drop is melon sundae, which is inspired by Melona, which is a creamy Korean ice cream that's like a summer special. So yeah, I mean, for us, we also really wanted to kind of focus on who we are as people beyond the brand, and we really wanted to incorporate our ethos and even like the branding work and the design work that came beyond the actual manufacturing of the gummies ourselves. Like we worked with queer design team, who are Asian American design team, and we really referenced a lot of our childhood favorite like candies, or like tiger bombs, or stuff that the third culture kid have most exposure to create something that really felt like us, and to create something that was distinctly Sundae School. And it's still a work in progress. It's not something that's like, oh, we made it, we're done. We're always trying to think about what impact can we have to the community, beyond, whether it's the queer community, whether it's the API community, whether it's, the people incarcerated because of the war on drugs. We always think about how we can impact them through our, products and through our messaging, but also directly. So we donate a percentage of our revenue to different organizations, and we partner up with an organization called Beam Impact, which also does that for many other brands like Instacart, or the bigger corporations. But to be able to contribute through products that are kind of made by queer people to the communities most directly affected, is such a it's so heartwarming, and it's such a privilege.
Thank you. I love that. I really enjoy hearing how identity is a huge part of the ethos of your company, but also the impetus of going into this industry. And personally love the brand. So it's great to hear a little bit of that background. Katie, would you like to go next? Just a little bit about what got you into cannabis, particularly edible cannabis, but as your company as a whole as well.
Sure. So I came from a background of laboratory science. I did a bunch of research in neurology and immunology, some memory research, pharmacology research, and I got kind of derailed. I was sick with Crohn's disease starting when I was a teenager, and it came to a head after I graduated from college, and I was just having a harder and harder time managing my symptoms and being able to function in a day-to-day way. And I started growing. I got a card in 2004. I was one of the very small group of people that was had a medical cannabis card in Oregon. There were a very small number of qualifying conditions at the time. Among them was Crohn's disease. And so I started growing strains that were really helpful to me. And in order to manage my symptoms during the day, working the long lab hours, I started making chocolates so that I could have a much more prolonged impact. And so that was how I started really learning about strain specificity and cultivar specificity and what a big difference that made for me, especially with my gut symptoms. And so fast forward another 10 years, I started Peak Extracts, but in the intervening time, I got a degree in Chinese medicine and herbology and acupuncture. And so I took my knowledge of laboratory extraction and Chinese herbal medicine and sort of melded them together into what we now know as a cannabis edibles company and topicals company. So I started Peak Extracts in 2014 with a line of strain-specific chocolates and topicals called Rescue Rub, which is a Chinese herbal formula for blunt force trauma. And so it just grew from there. And I'm happy to report that it's continuing to bring a lot of medicine to people in Oregon. About 75% of our staff was queer for most of the time that we ran the company. And we really tried to keep female focused, queer focused ethos, and our branding is very neutral and accessible. It's tough to navigate a market that is very heteronormative, but we really tried, and we tried to empower women and people of color and queer people along the way.
Thank you for that. I have a few people in my life that also are trying to the trial and error of figuring out how to use cannabis as a medical resource. And to know that you have such a scientific and analytical background, and then that there is kind of hope for the larger US to have that access to this medicine, just like life-saving. It impacts your ability to really function throughout the day. And I know that my friends are looking forward to a day when they can just go out and buy that instead of trying to find and dig and dig and dig and research to where and how and who they can get it from. So thank you so much for that, Katie.
Yeah.
And Rashad, would you like to tell us a little bit as well?
Yes. My story is a little bit interesting as well. I actually ended up getting in hemp and cannabis through farming. My family actually has a family farm for generations down in Florida. And we were at the point, my grandparents had passed away, and they sent all of us off to school to be professionals. My background is actually commercial real estate and finance. And so we had no one kind of running the farm. So we were actually doing some research to figure out, like new crops. And down in Florida, we had issues with just disease for the, different plants. And so, we were trying to figure out the best way for us to go. And then we start, hearing about growing hemp. And that kind of like opened up the whole, world for me. And from there, I ended up meeting my business partners. It's a husband and wife team. And they, Darius is our chief creative, and Evra, she's like our infusion chef. And so we decided to, we really wanted to, they really kind of made me see the importance of having, BIPOC owned community cannabis businesses and BIPOC communities. And that's kind of been our driver for our business, so far. And from there, we end up, we're just doing pop-ups, and we would go to the most random and get invited to the most random places, churches, libraries, things like that, where of course people are like, you guys are doing the weed here? And we're like, yes, we're doing the weed here. And it kind of allowed us to have the conversations that people really want to have, but are nervous. And like, of course, we're Southern based. We were Southern based. So, it was definitely not approved in these markets. So people really didn't have anywhere to go. And so my business is owned by my husband and I. And like I said, we're here based in Newark, and we really start seeing the bigger picture of this, that this is a lifestyle. And, our whole thing is hemp and cannabis as health and wellness. And so that kind of began the journey. And then we start doing the infused dinners. It's kind of how we ended up in the food space. And so we had kind of been doing them more on a private base. And last year at the Bay Haven Food and Wine Festival in Charlotte, North Carolina, was like our first official, like being a part of a bigger event. And interestingly enough, it was a vegan dinner, and people signed up not knowing, some people signed up not knowing it was infused, and they came anyway. And so they had so much fun, and it was, we sold out. And people really enjoyed like the love and the thoughtfulness that we put into the dinner and also into the food. And my business partner, Evra, is kind of our dosing chef. And so she was really good about formulating these experiences through, THC and CBD to make it like a really great experience, because a lot of people are nervous, and that's what we hear for our, when people come in our retail store. So a lot of folks have had bad, like especially edible experiences. So they're not really, as open to them. So that was one of our goals, is to make people like the space comfortable enough so you can ask questions and other things, and just really doing the education piece about it, which is our kind of our number one thing in the store. And so kind of from and we actually just had one of these dinners as a part of Hemp Fest last week with Chef Joya. She's a vegan chef, and we had worked together before. And it's beautiful to see, typically when you're doing infusions, there are fats and other things. And so like, how do you recreate that in vegan food? So it was another, sold out awesome event. And again, we like creating these experiences. We have an event space at our store. So we actually do that for private events. And, one of the funnest ones, I'll tell you, a young lady had a 75th infused brunch birthday party at our store. Never had as much fun than the 75-year-olds. And they're like, we know about this thing. So again, it's like so many different demographics that we see here. And, just our approach is that we want to, base our brand on being a lifestyle. And even for us, as we talk about being in the queer space, we have a couple employees, and one of my employees kind of came out to me probably about 6 months ago. And it was just a good thing, we don't, judge people, and those aren't questions we necessarily ask, but she just shared with me that she was so elated to work at a LGBTQI owned company. And like, I've just seen her evolve, and her comfort level and her self-esteem has just went up, and she's learned more and more about the products and explaining. And again, it was one of those moments we're literally just trying to do the best with what we have to get to where we want to go. And then to really see kind of these golden nugget moments that, we are changing the way that people are viewing it. We are changing the way that people view like cannabis business owners, which I think probably everybody has that experience, because people think you are something that we usually are not. And so again, we just continue to evolve and, make it a safe space for people to come and ask their hemp and cannabis questions.
I love the story about the 75-year-old.
It was
fantastic.
They were line dancing. I mean, people kind of tap out. They stayed the full 4 or 5 hours, and it was just beautiful to see, because again, I've been in a couple other. We just did a podcast last week, and you just hear the media is feeding so much negativity about cannabis in a certain way. So when you see moments like this, like these people are living their best lives right now, enjoying cannabis, enjoying life, and there's nothing bad about it.
Oh, definitely not. I mean, I think that there's definitely more good than bad. It just, you got to respect the substance, just like anything else.
Correct.
That's fantastic. And with Queer Food Foundation, we like to emphasize that the food industry is ever large, from the folks driving the trucks to bring our food to the cities, to the farmers actually growing it. The food industry is, I can't even say a percentage of what it is of the US economy, but sure, a lot. And just really appreciate the fact that your farm particularly was looking at hemp. In my personal life, I've been trying to, as clothes wear away, eventually really trying to go towards hemp, mostly as sustainable, how it feels, what it does for the environment. It's a wonderful product to be reintroducing into the economy.
Definitely. And it's funny, I was just reading a report this weekend when you talk about food and cannabis, that cannabis sales just surpassed chocolate sales in the US by like $20 billion. People bought more cannabis than chocolate. And so like this, and then we were talking about this as well. Like of course we were like, well, we need to make cannabis chocolate. Standpoint, right?
Right.
Love it that way, but it is starting to make a huge impact, on different industries. So it was, a fun fact to kind of know, to see that it is, the cannabis industry is growing for sure.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's always been there. I think, even the estimates that we're seeing now, they're just estimates. We can't even imagine how big this industry really is in just North America alone. All right. Well, kind of moving towards the dark underbelly of the cannabis world, but I'd like to hear your own initial barriers that you've faced coming into the industry, particularly as BIPOC and queer individuals. There's multitudes of processes, internal and external, that we have to go through in order to succeed and thrive in the industries that we're in. And hearing a little bit about your background, I think, could help those wanting to join. Rashad, you just talked, so I'm going to give you a second to rest, but Katie, do you want to go first this time?
Sure. I think that there's some definite intersectionality going on with the cannabis industry and queer and being female, or at least, appearing female. The most comical stories that I can share were having to hire a stuntman to do certain things in order to get licensed. So we have this really big thumpy extraction machine, and time again, when we would have, inspectors come in, they would ask who runs the machine. And I would say, oh, I've been running the machine for 5, 6, 7 years, 8 years, 10 years by this point. And they would be like, no, but who runs the machine? You can't be doing it. And I'd be like, well, no, it is me. So one time we hired this huge dude with a big red beard who had never been in our facility before to just literally stand next to the machine with his arms crossed and pretend to be the guy who runs the machine. And he showed up, he was there for 2 hours. We got the inspection passed. I gave him some chocolate and he was like, thank you, I love your chocolate, love what you do, goodbye. And that was it. So I encourage people to be creative. And if someone tells you no, if it's because of the way you look or who you are, then sometimes you have to get creative, which is totally infuriating that we have to pretend to be different people in order to get our goals met. But at the end of the day, it got us our machine passed. So
yeah, I like to say, we're just playing a game that you guys made up. We're gonna win.
Right. Totally.
Yeah, it's definitely infuriating, and something that I've heard quite often. It's just like getting a buddy, getting a friend, getting a male presenting figure to be with you in male spaces makes the whole process so much easier, which is unfortunate reality that we live in, but we got to do what we got to do. Dae, do you have any ideas, not everybody has to answer. I want you guys to feel comfortable with whichever question you want. So don't feel pressured to say anything you're not willing to.
When we first kind of came into the space, which was in 2017. It was a lot of our meetings when we met with retailers to manufacturers to growers and whatnot. It was a lot of straight white dudes, white male kind of, and you know, some were obviously very open to be able to kind of look at a you know, Korean American queer individual, you know, to be like, hey, like, would love to learn more about your processes and grow. You know, I was really kind of in a student's like a mindset of a student, you know, at first, because there's so much like rich, you know, beyond as a consumer, right? It's a totally different thing to do business as an entrepreneur in this space, you know, and that journey, you know, for me, you know, I was a 24-year-old kid, you know, just so curious to learn more about, you know, the different kind of aspects of it, whether it's scientific or to, or through the commerce aspect or through the history and the culture aspect. And initially, I must say that it was a very tough, like, uphill battle. You know, they were like, what does this guy know? Blah, 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 blah. But I think at the end of the day, like, the most important thing is just, you know, that hunger for knowledge. And there in Korea, we have an idiom that says there's no tree that doesn't fall down if you axe it 10 times. So I just kept knocking doors, you know, not scared of rejection, because, you know, people are busy, totally understand. And but then I do think that there is this kind of a seismic shift that's happening in the industry right now. I can't speak for other markets, but at least in California, a lot of the old guards, as you know it, you know, this Canadian venture, private equity backed brands and retailers are all folding, you know, because they don't, you know, they're kind of looking at it as a product only, rather than looking at like the impact it has to the culture, or like how to navigate it as a, you know, as a plant that's also majority cash business sense. So I think with that sort of a mindset shift, there's been more, you know, we now see less kind of, if you go to the at the seat at the tables, I mean, granted, I'm not privy to all the conversations. When you go to these like industry mixers and industry events, you see more faces that are that, you know, represent the population of those who consume it, you know. So that's been really amazing. And to be able to, you know, I have in like our little California cannabis business kind of founder community, there are a lot of LGBTQIA folks, like, and we support each other and we show up for each other. They're not just competitors, because this is an ecosystem that we're creating and there's room for everyone.
I agree with that. There's definitely room for everyone in this game. It's certainly about making the space and figuring out ways to uplift both of everyone involved, right now, particularly within your own state, eventually, hopefully on a federal level. Just as a reminder, this will be recorded for the JBF vault, and we'll be sharing this around with folks afterwards. So just realize I didn't say that at the start of the conversation, but Rashad, do you have some points to make for yourself?
Yes, I definitely, as everyone else can attest, whether it's race, sex, you know, everything else is definitely a tough industry. In general, it's interesting, but for my husband and I, we don't necessarily read queer. And so sometimes when people meet us together, they're like, oh, you guys are together. We're like, yes, like that's my spouse. And and we haven't necessarily, it hasn't caused any issues or anything, but, folks have just commented it about like us working together in a business. He runs a pretty large size nonprofit full time, and I run these businesses full time, and we kind of collaborate to make it happen. And I've actually appreciated his like organization and other things to help bring to sometimes my entrepreneurship mind, which is like about the big picture and customer experience and all that good stuff. And to be able to kind of use each other's as their best weapons to either figure out where we need to work with City Hall, or if it's with the architect, or with state representatives, to find out which one of us can use our wonder powers, our wonder twin powers, to get the job done. I would say, especially being a person of color in this space, kind of like Dae was saying, you have these like older white guys that are like somehow in their mind dictating what the culture is, and I'm like, but the culture is basically what we created, and it is what we want it to be. And in traditional finance and things like that, and honestly, that's been one of the biggest barriers for us, access to capital. And I know that you hear that all over the board. And I think when you add in, race and sex and all those things, it makes it even more tough. And as we were talking about earlier, as a cannabis business owner, there's also the perception that, you might not be the best business person, or these other things that are just, again, they're definitely not true. Like, I've met so many wonderful people in the cannabis space. And again, it's more of the like introduction. This is who we are. This is our business. This is what we represent, to be able to, push the ball forward no matter what. I like the Dae's thing saying, the 10 times, trying to, because I felt like a lot of times you did have to do it, like whacking away, yes, they added, and just whacking away the perception at the stigmas and everything. And we talked about in this podcast, because you do get so much negative energy at you sometimes, and it's like you really have to like have that self-preservation to know that like, I'm doing the right thing, this is what's best for my community, we're helping people maintain their peace, and so that's important enough for us to keep going.
Mm-hmm. One point that you actually brought up, the access to capital, which is a question that I've had for you three as well. Just how have you been able to either fundraise or get funders from across the board? Is it local? Is it hyper local? Do you go into community outreach and get investors through personal relationships?
Yeah, it was definitely we pretty much made the sacrifice to try to self-fund as much as we can. We're probably about 60 to 90 days out to doing our first capital raise. But we just thought, kind of like we're saying in this conversation, that we wanted to be the majority owners in our company, so that we could always make sure that we keep, BIPOC, the queer thing, always at the front of our business, and not necessarily be at the back. And we have some seed grants from people who just believed in us and saw in our vision. And we initially had another group of investors that we end up having to part with, that didn't necessarily have our best interests in mind. And sometimes you find out those things later compared to the beginning. So we've definitely tried a couple different ways, but what we found best so far was the people. And I think everybody will probably say this on the panel. I think people are more into who you are compared to the business in general, because that's the thing that they can count on. Because cannabis, for the most part, minus different market dynamics, is a successful business model if you can get into it and pass all the barriers and all the other things. So I think people are more looking at your team and also who do you have supporting you. And I think that's been one of the big things for us, is that the group of people, our support system that we put together, people from like different backgrounds and everything, that they have connected us to other people that have then saw the vision of what we had, and gave us some grace to be able to even make mistakes and other things, to really find the right path to make a successful business.
Yeah, thank you for that. We have time for, I think, one more question and response from each of you before we go into a little bit of Q&A. I want to save about 10 minutes for Q&A at the end. So I'll end off with kind of a brighter future question. What is your ideal future for US cannabis? It could be also your state, it could be your company, you know, what's any ideal future that you really have as an end goal for the next 10, 15 years? Dae, would you like to go first?
Sure. I think one, like first and foremost, like beyond like the practical and like the nitty-gritties of it, first and foremost, I think my wish would be, you know, for this sort of kind of misconception that cannabis is, you know, this evil. I think still there's a lot of preconceptions about it, even in the youth generation. Like, you know, our TikTok is very active and we do a lot of like cheeky unboxing of the mochi gummies TikTok and whatnot. And there's a lot of Gen Z audience that is like, oh my gosh, like this is, you know, such, this is so evil, like blah, 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 blah. And I just hope that there's more education. And I think, you know, people in this panel, like all of you guys are kind of trailblazing that efforts across, you know, America in different parts of the place to really educate the consumers about, you know, the benefits and, you know, also potential side effects. You know, how do we incorporate cannabis safely into our lives? And that can be a choice when there is education and information about it. So that's one. Two, obviously, you know, this sort of interstate BS, this interstate kind of tomfoolery, I think can definitely be mediated. And like the lack of safe banking, y'all, like the California cannabis is a little bit, it could be improved much more if there is a governing body of regulations that protect people through the supply chain to get paid on time. You know, like the fact that ACH is still an issue in California, ridiculous. New York apparently is, you know, most of the business is happening through the ACHs. But that being said, like the fact that we are limited with our banking options is something that is, you know, that is not a stable ground for, you know, a productive, prolific industry. So those two, I think, would be my biggest wishes.
Yeah, I actually just went to San Francisco a couple months ago now, and for the first time ever was able to buy from a dispensary using a credit card. And I was shocked. I was like, oh my God, I didn't have my cash on me, et cetera. He's like, oh, don't worry, you could pay with the card. And it didn't even pop into my head that I needed to do that just because I'm not on the business end of what you all are doing day to day. And just realizing that like sigh of relief, like, oh, this is so easy and I get points on this. Amazing. You know? Because it's like, I'm spending the money, I might as well get the points.
Yeah, exactly.
Katie, do you have kind of thoughts on this?
Yeah, sure. I think, you know, eliminating 280E to piggyback onto the banking conversation, that it's just crippled our industry, not being able to have things like marketing be an expense. I don't know if everybody knows about 280E, but it's a tax code that Reagan started and it's terrible. And it means that we can't write off expenses, which means that we can't run an effective business in most ways. So I'd love to see that. And then also just accessibility across the United States, which interstate commerce will really help because that will allow people like us who are growing in Southern Oregon totally sustainably with the sun. So we could, you know, ship across the country, get it to people so they don't have to use indoor, extremely, you know, resource intensive methods, pesticide intensive methods. And so that's safety, sustainability, and, you know, sustainability for our business practices too, with elimination of these banking hurdles.
No, thank you. And Rashad, what's your ideal future look like?
Yes, actually, I want to shout out our wonderful Senator Cory Booker
Mhm.
from New Jersey. That he has been really an advocate of ours, and he's also been on top of this finance piece because along with the just the tax piece of it, it's just like access to banking accounts and other things, and like you said, which ties into the ACH. And and I would say probably my first one would be access to capital and just the banking system, and they don't realize how dangerous they make our industry. And it doesn't have to be just by this whole making it a cash business. And being a formerly commercial real estate banker, I would think that the banks would be all over this, like, to have access to this type of money that is moving around. And then I would say probably my second one, just kind of like that diversity piece for that the industry to really reflect the consumer base, because it just doesn't right now, and it hasn't for a long time. And I think that in itself, we have a lot of people that bring their products into our store that to basically get our ideas and how we can make it better. We're also always trying to help products get shelf ready, because one of the things that we currently do at Plantivia Wellness is that we try to source at least 60% of our products from BIPOC and LGBTQI companies, so that we can be minority companies selling the products of other folks in our store, to our market. And so to be able to kind of tie those worlds together, I think would make a better ecosystem. And I agree with Katie as well to to make it like interstate commerce, because it's crazy that literally from where I am here in New Jersey, I can see New York. Like I can literally make the little thing, that's how close it is. But you literally cannot do, THC commerce across those two lines.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, I feel you on that one. The interstate commerce, once that's able to actually happen, I'm hoping other things will fall into place, because once you get cross state boundaries, you have to have a system for managing and maintaining and record keeping all of this. So hopefully that's the domino that causes the effect that we're trying to see. I have a few questions from the audience and listeners. So I'm just gonna start with the first one I got, and feel free anybody who wants to answer. So the first one was, are there any major efforts your company or partnering companies are doing to help combat the issue of drug charged incarceration?
I can actually take that one. That's another thing we do. We do expungement clinics. And we found that it's a couple other dispensaries here as well have definitely been working for that. And New Jersey has been ahead of the curve as far as really pushing like getting rid of those records. But then it's just kind of what we were saying earlier. But then the barriers that are created is that because all of the guidelines are based on municipalities, and New Jersey is a place with you have townships and counties and all these other layers that make it more difficult. But I have seen definitely, and we try to do this well, that people are really pushing to take the stigma away from folks that have been convicted before, and also getting those folks in business. They have some great programs to do that as well in New Jersey.
Yeah. Certainly, New York also has a few similar programs, particularly giving formerly incarcerated people first dibs on the dispensary licenses. Now, how that's actually happening in real time, it's debatable, but at least there's the first step going on. Dae, Katie, is there something you two would like to add?
Yeah, for us at Sundae School, we do it through two main ways. First is working with manufacturers and working with farmers who have these equity licenses. So, for us, we are based in California. So we have multiple kind of co-packers as well as farmers, as well as, different parts of distributors, all of these different sort of parts of the ecosystem. And few of our partners, especially, the one that manufacture our pre-rolls are, from the equity incentive programs that California launched in 2016. And, it's so great to see that their business is still, it's, I feel like 7 years in cannabis is like 70 years, or at least maybe that's just my perception of it. But to be able to run a business and to be able to sustain it is just something so special that I've been able to witness firsthand. And then second is we do it through donations. While like kind of donating 1% of your revenue may not seem like a lot to many people, as a business that is barely profitable, it's a lot from taking from our top line. We try to be really conscious, and especially with our e-commerce business, we give people the choice of where they can donate to. So for instance, for when the Texas Texas went rogue with the trans ban. One of our charities that was an option out of the 4 that you could donate to was for the teenagers and based in Texas. And obviously for 420, we do a lot of kind of cannabis related or for earth related kind of charities. For next month's for API month, we do it for the Asian American community, and also even for North Korea, for the people who are defecting from the country. So we work with these various organizations, and we for our cannabis, we do it ourselves for cannabis related charities, but then for e-commerce, we try to give our customers an option to donate proceeds of their purchase to the charities that they feel most akin to. And we do this with Beam Impact. They are the ones who vet the charities for, we kind of creative direct. We're like, hey, we really feel strongly about these causes, and we really want to make a difference. And they kind of go through the vetting of them, which is a pretty arduous process with them, and setting up the accounts, and then even to automating the payments.
Love to hear that. That's giving consumers the option. I think it's also great marketing for those nonprofits and organizations, even if somebody clicks no, at least they have that in their heads now that is a source that they can go to. And Katie, I saw that you'd like to say something too.
Oh, sure. I just want to add that the Last Prisoner Project is an amazing organization that we've worked with in the past. Wonderful values there. And I think that one of the biggest things that I've focused on is mentorship. People do not have access to these roles in this industry because they don't have the expertise, and people are often not willing to share their secrets. And there's a little bit of a boys' club, especially among the straight white dudes, not wanting to share their expertise or their money. And so I think it's really important that we work with other people who are marginalized in order to provide mentorship and some ideas, some workshopping. Success Centers in the Bay Area is an amazing organization. I volunteered some time there, and their entire focus is to help entrepreneurs get a good start from marginalized groups.
Yeah, certainly. When I was younger, and even still now, mentorship is something that I'm always on the lookout for. There's folks that know so much more than me, is particularly like what you three are doing. The intricacies of starting a business like this it's something that you kind of have to do by trial and error, but if you don't have to, that's even better. And I really appreciate you doing that work for folks looking to get into this industry. Okay, so I got another question here, and we have 9 minutes left. So maybe we'll get to this one, maybe the last one, but we'll see. So cannabis is legal. Cannabis in legal states get taxed very heavily for the consumer. What would you like to see these taxes put forward to?
I'll go if no one else is reaching for it. I would really like to see it be education and addiction management. I know that there's a lot of push towards putting it to law enforcement, which I'm not a big fan of. So I'll just leave it there.
Yeah.
I would say I would say just like one thing they are doing in New Jersey is making it to go towards grants and other programs to kind of fund businesses. I think that would definitely probably help the most, and to create whether it's think tanks or incubator spaces. The biggest piece, and it's interesting coming from I was a commercial real estate broker. Most issues that folks have are is finding a location. So maybe even with some of this money is used to purchase real estate where people can open their businesses safely without the hassle of having to deal with like crazy landlords. So I would say access to capital and real estate and education.
Mhm.
For me, I agree with all of the above. I do want to shout out that cannabis comes from earth, which is dying right now, probably most likely because of us. So this is probably not going to happen, and this is a far reach, but I would love to be it spent towards saving our planet, whether it's through green energy development, like, the fossil fuel and the gas, like that is, hurting our earth. And yeah, I mean, I think there's so many ways, even from recycle, there's so many individual level tactics that can be enforced so that we can have earth for longer and to have people enjoy cannabis for longer.
Mhm. Yeah, right on the heels of Earth Day too.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Well, we have 6 minutes, so I could ask a last question, or I'd love to open the floor up to you three if you have anything you'd like to plug at the end, any final words.
I would just like to say thank you for providing a platform for, obviously, like until I, got, I didn't really think about my experiences as a queer founder, really with in the context of cannabis. I thought about it a lot as a context of fashion designer, just because, sartorial expression, I'm very influenced by my identity as, queer. But with cannabis, I like, when I started kind of thinking about it beyond like Sundae School and our products, like the industry, like it's been such a journey to embark on and a community to rely on. And that aspect I kind of, forgot about, because, we're making cannabis products for everyone, but there are so many queer roots behind it and the forces that have supported us, from the get-go, that, I kind of forgot about. So I wanted to, have the sincerest gratitude for y'all for kind of sparking that. But then also to, our other panelists out here and to the people who are watching for, continuing to grow and expand on this industry and really for being true to themselves.
Thank you. That was beautiful. Yeah, no, I appreciate it. We kind of was the hope, is to bring that little spark to people's forefront. Any final words from you, Rashad or Katie?
Yes, kind of reiterate same thing that Dae was saying, just thank you for a space to have these conversations. And I was similar to him. I didn't think about it until the invite. I was like, oh yeah, I guess we are, because you're like every day trying to stay within regulations, expand, run operations, and sometimes you forget in the moment, either we've achieved these things or this is how our business is evolving. So it's great that James Beard, has created this space on their platform to be able to have these conversations, so people know that we're out there, and there are other folks going through the same thing that you are. I think that's the biggest piece of it. And so I think there's so much value in being able to have an open conversation like this.
Great. And Katie, anything else to wrap us up?
Echo both of them. And also I'd love to just end with the positive note of, cannabis as as an industry, very difficult to navigate. And so people who are of marginalized groups, BIPOC, queer, however you want to describe yourselves, we're used to being told no. And this is an ideal place to just push through that, because we can't be discouraged by being told no. Because cannabis, they're going to tell you no at every stance. Like you can't put your building here, you have to follow these regulations. And so don't be discouraged, just keep moving forward.
Yeah.
And to anyone listening, feel free to reach out because, and maybe, we're busy and don't respond in time, but like, again, there's no tree that doesn't go down without 10 whackings. So just whack away.
Yeah, that's certainly true. Don't be afraid of rejection, like you're both saying. Well, thank you all so much. It was such a gift to be able to hear from everyone's perspective and what you're doing. And I really appreciate how you're the trailblazers for an industry that I am 100% sure will grow and give back to the community. And yeah, so again, Jona from QFF, and this will be the end of our first Canna Culture conversation. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
QFF.